All right, thanks, guys. We're coming off a perfect 4-0 day in my premium sports picks on patreon.com/Brock page yesterday. And of course, that's a site that I operate that gives you premium daily sports picks beginning at just $1.99 through the end of the month. It's also going to improve our record to 2-0 in our last two extra daily pick tier package plays as well. And the good news is this: we have another extra daily pick tier package play going off today. We'll go ahead and talk a little bit more about that in just a second. But before we go ahead and move on, let's go ahead and take a look at some Russian Liga Pro table tennis action. And we're going to go ahead and start with Viktor Ivanov squaring off against Vitali Basilewski in a 6 p.m. Eastern showdown. Basilewski dropped 2 out of his last 4 matches, including a 3-1 defeat to Viktor Ivanov during that stretch. Vitali also lost to Oleg Nikiforov in a heartbreaker 3-2 during that span as well. Vitali's been victorious in just 3 out of his last 8, good for just 37% in that category. He's also a winless 0-4 in his last 4 head-to-head meetings with Viktor Ivanov. And speaking of Viktor, aside from really having Basilewski's number as of late, he's been victorious in 2 out of his last 4 himself, including a solid 3-2 victory over Andrei Kirilenko during that stretch. Ivanov's also been victorious in 4 out of his last 6, throwing out his most recent contest with Oleg Nikiforov. Viktor's defeated the likes of Basilewski, Kirilenko, and Erudin within his last handful of outings. Looks like a fairly decent spot for Ivanov backers here. I think he should be able to get the job done in this spot. So with all that said and done, I'm going to go ahead and lean toward Viktor Ivanov getting the job done for some moneyline cash. And before we go ahead and move on, I just want to quickly take a timeout and welcome you to the show. Got some lines of personal leans out for Thursday's Russian Liga Pro table tennis action. Happy Thursday to you. Hopefully you're having a good week. The weekend is almost here. It's right around the corner. Now, before we go ahead and move on with today's program, I just want to quickly remind you once again to check me out on my website at patreon.com/Brock page, where once again, we're coming off a perfect 4-0 day in all our premium picks on that website yesterday. We also improved to 2-0 in our last 2 extra daily pick tier package plays on that site as well. And like I said earlier, we have great news for you. We have another extra daily pick tier package play going off today, and that's a very, very good package for us right now. We do daily premium sports picks on that website beginning at just $1.99 through the end of the month. We'll bill you the day you sign up, and then the first of every month following that. We have a bunch of different memberships, tiers, and packages that you can subscribe to. Currently, we have well over 650 members signed up and active on that page. Now, you might be wondering, why would all those folks sign up to receive Patreon picks, where they can get them right here for free on YouTube? And that's certainly a great point, a great concern. But there is a big problem with me handicapping every single game that's on the board, side and total. And the problem is this: if you were to go ahead and bet every single game that's on the slate that I put out here on YouTube, side and total, you're virtually guaranteeing yourself failure. And I know that sounds crazy. I know that sounds weird coming from me on this show, but just hear me out. If you're going to go ahead and bet every single game that's on the slate with your hard-earned money, side and total, it's certainly not a winning formula for success. And as a matter of fact, it's a recipe for disaster. The books are way too smart for that. They're way too sharp. They certainly have a lot more money than you and I do combined to be able to absorb that kind of action. And most important, guys, the math becomes aggressively against you the more and more games you play like that. So what I do on Patreon is I make life a lot easier for you. I break it down and focus in on just 3 to 4 premium selections per day. They're high percentage picks, games that I personally have action on. And I'll tell you this much, my current Patreon record is a whole lot better than it is here on YouTube, handicapping every single game that's on the board, side and total. And the good news is this: if you want to go ahead and check out my current Patreon record, you have access to that right now. You can actually do that for free right now. My current record is located right on the homepage. All you have to do is click the link in the description section below. And once again, that is patreon.com/Brock page. And without any further ado, let's go ahead and dive back into some more free lines and personal leans right here on YouTube. All starts Eastern Standard Time. And on deck, we've got Andrei Ovechnikov taking on Anatoly Trushkin in a 6 p.m. start time. Trushkin has lost 2 out of his last 3, including a tough 3-1 defeat at the hands of Humatov during that span. He also lost to Andrei Ovechnikov in a nail-biter 3-2 during that span. Trushkin's been victorious in just 2 out of his last 8 contests, good for a win percentage of just .250. He suffered losses to the likes of Humatov, Mattv, and Kritzkoff during that span of outings. Now Ovechnikov, on the other side, 2-0 straight up in his last 2 head-to-head meetings with Trushkin, including an impressive 3-0 victory during that stretch. Andrei's been victorious in 2 out of his last 4, including a solid 3-1 victory over Humatov during those contests. Overall, Andrei's been victorious in 4 out of his last 6, throwing out his most recent meeting with Igor Mattv. Looks like a pretty good spot for Ovechnikov backers here. So with all that in mind, I'm going to go ahead and lean toward Andrei Ovechnikov getting the job done for some moneyline cash. All right, next matchup I have for you, it is going to be our team Erudin squaring off against Andrei Kirilenko in a 6:30 slugfest. Kirilenko is coming off a bad 3-1 loss to the likes of Vitali Basilewski in his last outing. Andrei's also lost his last 3 straight matches, including a tough 3-2 loss to Oleg Nikiforov during that stretch as well. Overall, Andrei's been victorious in just 1 out of his last 8 contests, good for a win percentage of just 125 during that span. Even worse, Kirilenko was shut out 3-0 in 2 out of those 7 losses. Meanwhile, on the other side, we're looking at a little bit different story here, as Artie's coming off a gritty 3-2 victory over Viktor Ivanov in his last outing. Right now, Erudin's currently on a 2-match win streak, including a dominating 3-0 shutout victory over Oleg Nikiforov during that stretch as well. Artie's really had his way with Kirilenko as of late, going a perfect 3-0 straight up in their last trio of head-to-head meetings. Erudin's 6-2 record in his last 8 is one of the better records in Liga Pro during that span. It's also good for a win percentage of .750 during that stretch as well. This looks like a solid spot for Erudin backers. May want to include this one in a 2 or 3 leg parlay, but overall, give me Artie Erudin getting the job done on the money line. All right, next contest I have for you, it is going to be Sergei Kuzmin squaring off against Andrei Babkin in a 6:30 p.m. showdown. Now, if you like Babkin getting the job done here, just keep in mind he's coming fresh off an embarrassing 3-0 shutout defeat to Andrei Sadkov in his last matchup. Now, Andrei Babkin's also currently on a 2-match losing streak, with 2 out of his last 3 losses coming by way of embarrassing shutout. The other shutout loss was to Basmanov. Now, overall, Babkin suffered defeats to the likes of Sadkov, Basmanov, and the struggling Ivan Pander during his last handful of outings. Now, Kuzmin, on the other side, he's coming fresh off a very impressive outing with Basmanov, where he destroyed him 3-0. Kuzmin's been victorious in his last 2 straight, including a solid 3-2 victory over Ivan Pander during that span. Overall, Kuzmin's one of the hottest men in Russia Liga Pro right now, going a perfect 5-0 straight up in his last 5, including 3 shutout wins in his last 6 victories. Kuzmin's beaten the likes of Basmanov, Pander, and Sadkov during his current tear of success. Looks like a very nice spot for Kuzmin backers here. I'm going to go ahead and lean towards Sergei Kuzmin winning this one straight up on the money line. And with that, I'm going to slide into my next and final matchup for the show. It is going to be Igor Mattv squaring off against Evgeny Kritzkoff in a 6:30 p.m. showdown. Kritzkoff is coming off a solid 3-2 victory over Ovechnikov in his last outing. He's also currently on a 2-match win streak, including a dominating 3-0 victory over Humatov during that span. Evgeny is currently 5-1 straight up in his last 6, good for a win percentage of .833 during that span. He's also been victorious in 6 out of his last 8. with solid wins over the likes of Ovechnikov, Humatov, and Shrushkin during that stretch. Meanwhile, Mattv on the other side, just 1-7 in his last 8 head-to-head meetings with Kritzkoff, just absolutely dominated by Evgeny over the past month. Igor's also lost 4 out of his last 8, including defeats to the hands of Kritzkoff, Humatov, and Ovechnikov during that span. Gotta fade Mattv in this spot here. Give me Evgeny Kritzkoff winning this one straight up in convincing fashion. All right, let's go ahead and dive into some shout-outs. Once again, brought to you by patreon.com/BrockPage. First from Patreon, shout out to Brandon Saunders, Robert Somerville, John Klotz, Michael Jordan. Also want to give a shout out to Jansen Bordino, Frank Capra, Chemo136, and Jeremy Wesley. Next, we have shout outs from Instagram. Got to give a shout out to Damian Larson, Shalaja Swami, Jaheim Waller. Hey, shout out to Lamar Bowman. Also want to give a shout out to Josh Moling, Bobby Bressler, Weizong Lin, and Abraham Lacayo. And finally, shout outs from YouTube. Got to give a shout out to William Boyd, Kevin Taylor, Double J. Shout out to Extra Fortney, Raw Honey New Orleans, Stephen Lewis, David Chan, and last but certainly not least, got to give a shout out to my man, Marvin's roommate. All right, guys, that's going to do it for me. I got to thank you for joining me right here on YouTube. I really hope you enjoyed all this great free content, all this great free information. Happy Thursday to you. Best of luck to you. And I look forward to seeing you later on today on my website at patreon.com/BrockPage.